evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Limpim Visham. Here are the top stories we're tracking for you on Monday, the 27th of April. Relief work on as earthquake hit Nepal continues to come to terms with disaster. India races to offer help in catastrophe struck Nepal. And Pakistan not spending enough to improve education sector, says UNICEF. And now for all the details. It was a weekend that turned a picturesque Nepal into a stack of rubble. The Himalayan nation now struggles to come to terms with the unaccountable loss that hundreds of thousands of people continue to face. The death toll in one of the biggest earthquakes in 8 decades has crossed 3,700.
There is a feeling of fear in the eyes of citizens of Nepal, as the landlocked country battles its worst natural disaster in recent times. Incessant rains are adding to the woes. Thousands are living in fear as aftershocks continue to hit the mountainous country even on Monday. Millions who have been displaced after Saturday's earthquake struggle to gather back their lives from the heaps of debris. The Tribhuvan International Airport, the country's only international airport, was reopened on Monday to make way for aid from other nations that continues to flow in ever since disaster struck. While rescue teams are carrying the unabated search for survivors from the heaps of debris, hundreds of thousands of people are spending nights in the open, fearing more tremors. The death toll, however, continues to rise amid relief efforts and persistent aftershocks. With the hospitals facing acute damages, medical staff is treating the injured in open. For those who survived the quake, accommodating the patients was a mammoth task.
There are a lot of patients who have got devastating injuries, including head, scalping, de-scalping, as well as the amputations, whole of the limb amputations.
For the survivors, it was the biggest nightmare they could face. Many are trying to come to terms with the loss of their loved ones. The 7.9 magnitude quake which hit Nepal on Saturday damaged infrastructure worth billions, other than claiming thousands of lives. The tremor, with an epicenter some 50 miles east of Nepali city Pokhara, flattened its national capital Kathmandu, leaving a pall of dust all over. The over a minute-long shocks brought down centuries of Nepalese history, collapsing 4 out of 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including the Dharahara Tower, the Patan Darbar Square and major temples in Bhaktapur. The Nepalese authorities held a mass funeral for hundreds of victims of the earthquake on Sunday.
हमारा मामा का मामी और उसका बेटा और बेटी यहाँ पर भूकंप से मर गए बीत गए इसलिए हम लोग रात 12 बजे से यहाँ पर इंतजार कर रहे हैं.
Search teams are also trying to reach Mount Everest, where a number of foreign trekkers are believed to be trapped. The catastrophe devastated major base camps for mountaineers, killing numerous climbers.
It was like 4,000 feet of snow just kind of coming, and there's nowhere to run. So I told everybody to get down, and then I put my hands over my head and just buried myself as much as I could. And basically the snow hit. It's about 45 seconds or a minute for it to go by.
Nepal government has sought help from the international community to fight one of the biggest national disasters it has faced. Countries including India, US, Canada, Israel, China, Pakistan and Germany, along with the UN and ASEAN, have dispatched disaster management teams to Kathmandu for helping in rescue and relief operations.
Providing constant supply of relief and rescue teams to quake-ravaged Nepal, India's Operation Maitri was in full swing even on the third day on Monday. India, which was the first nation to offer assistance to Nepal, has ramped up efforts on deploying medical and engineering teams and restoring road links. A report.
India faced hurdles on Monday in getting aircraft, including a C-130 transport plane carrying tons of food, medical and relief supplies, into earthquake-hit Nepal. Other personnel of India's National Disaster Response Force, such as civilian doctors, are also poised to join the effort. However, rains and aftershocks have slowed operations as the Himalayan country faces a death toll now above 3,000 from the devastating weekend earthquake.
Kathmandu, as you know, is a very high altitude airfield and it's got hills all around the place. Weather was quite bad and not safe for conducting operations. We'll be making a fresh attempt and hopefully weather should be with us.
Meanwhile, Indian military forces stepped up efforts to evacuate Indians stranded outside of the capital Kathmandu. Earlier efforts to evacuate by air managed to bring back over 1900 people, including some foreign tourists.
सिचुएशन तो वो फील जो था वो शेयर तो कर नहीं सकते, बस महसूस जो उस टाइम होता है वो पता है। हम ये मेरे बच्चे नीचे खेल रहे थे बाहर, हम लोग ऊपर थे, जैसे भूकंप आया मुझे नहीं पता मैं नीचे कैसे उतरा। बिल्डिंग गिर रही थी, प्लास्टर सारा, जैसे जैसे पैर में मोच आ गई, पैर मुड़ गया, पता नहीं बच्चों को पहले निकाला।
As part of Operation Maitri, the Indian Foreign Ministry has also set up helplines and announced compensation for Indian families who have lost their kin in Nepal. The Indian government is pulling all stops to help its strategically important neighbour as it grapples with the scale of disaster. In addition to rescue forces, the government will also send a team from various ministries to coordinate its relief operation. Avneet Arora for South Asia Newsline in New Delhi.
Relief work is still on as the death toll in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa cyclone and rain climbed to 45 on Monday. The northwestern province was hit by torrential rains and hailstorm on Sunday, ripping through areas including capital Peshawar, Charsada and Nowshera. While the calamity left a trail of destruction with several houses collapsing, rescue operation too was hindered due to blocking of roads. Injured continue to be treated at various hospitals across Khyber. The provincial government has declared a state of emergency in the region. While the storm is said to have subsided, more downpour has been forecast for next 24 hours. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has denied of having any involvement in the murder of prominent human rights activist Sabeen Mahmood. She is the latest rights campaigner to be killed for highlighting the issues in Pakistan's troubled Balochistan province.
Rights activists and civil society in Pakistan are continuing their protests seeking the arrest of the killers of Sabeen Mahmood, who was gunned down by unidentified men on Saturday. Though investigations are on, no arrests have been made in the case so far. No groups have also claimed responsibility for the murder. 40-year-old Mahmood was laid to rest on Saturday by family and friends in southern Karachi. Many said with her death, the Pakistani civil society has lost someone who stood for the rights of the oppressed.
Civil society की एक आवाज़ थी, बहुत मौसर आवाज़ थी, अपने गैर जानिबदार और हर मसलहत से बालातर होकर उसूलों की बात करना, उसूलों पर मौक़िफ़ इख्तियार करना और मज़लूमों ये मुकदमे को आगे बढ़ाना, मज़लूमों की बात करना, मेरे ख्याल में एक उनकी शहादत मैं समझता हूँ कि एक बहुत बड़ा कौमी नुकसान है.
Mahmood ran an open forum in Karachi called the Second Floor for discussions on human rights abuses and other civil rights issues. She was shot by unidentified gunmen late on Friday, hours after she hosted a seminar on the issue of rights violations in Balochistan. The talk, which featured prominent Baloch campaigner Mama Qadir Baloch, was originally scheduled to take place earlier this month in Lahore University, but was abruptly called off due to alleged pressure from the government. Mama Qadir and other Baloch activists have blamed Pakistan's main intelligence agency, the ISI, for Mahmood's murder. This is not the first time the ISI have come under suspicion on attack on those highlighting the gross human rights violations in Balochistan, Pakistan's largest province. Senior Pakistani journalist Hamid Mir was critically injured last year after unidentified gunmen opened fire at him. His family and later Mir himself blamed the ISI for the attack on him after he interviewed Mama Qadir Baloch on his TV show.
Radical Sunni groups continue to protest in Pakistan against the government's decision to stay out of Saudi-led strike on Yemen. This comes even after Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif explained to Saudi leadership on why his country's decided to stay neutral.
Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Karachi over the weekend, urging the government to pay heed to Saudi's request for military help in Yemen crisis. Similar demonstrations were held in capital Islamabad too. Various Sunni groups called on the Nawaz Sharif government to help Saudi, claiming that the latter had stood with Pakistan in difficult times.
जब सऊदी अरब पाकिस्तान का एक दोस्त है। सऊदी अरब पाकिस्तान में हर मुश्किल के वक़्त पाकिस्तान के काम आया करता है, तो वही सऊदी अरब आज मुश्किल में आया है, वो पाकिस्तान से इमदाद मांग रहा है। तो पाकिस्तान को गैर मशरूत तौर पर सऊदी अरब की हिमायत करनी चाहिए और बगावत के कुचलने के लिए पाकिस्तानी फ़ौज को वहाँ चले जाना चाहिए।
The Saudi-led Arab nations, which began airstrikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen on March 26th, had requested Sunni-majority Pakistan for military help. However, Pakistan Parliament decided not to lend military support to Saudi, fearing that the conflict could degenerate into a sectarian tension in its own country. This had, however, evoked sharp reaction from many Sunni groups, with a number of them publicly denouncing the government's stand. Islamabad had also come under heavy criticism from the Arab League and a number of Gulf countries, including the UAE, which warned Pakistan that the decision would come at a price. Prime Minister Sharif, in an effort to regain the confidence of the Gulf nations, had led a high-level delegation to Riyadh last week to explain the circumstances that led to Pakistan's decision to stay neutral.
US President Barack Obama had given the CIA more flexibility to carry out drone strikes in Pakistan, reports have said. According to reports, while President Obama tightened rules for the drone program in 2013, he has approved a waiver, easing the rules for Pakistan than anywhere else to strike suspected militants. This would give CIA approval to conduct signature strikes on a suspected militant without collecting evidence. This comes days after the US president apologized for the accidental killing of 2 aid workers in a drone strike. White House had last week acknowledged that Warren Weinstein, an American who had been held by Al-Qaeda since 2011, and Giovanni Loporto, an Italian national who was a hostage with the terrorists since 2012, were killed accidentally in a drone attack. The situation of education in Pakistan is grim. Though successive governments have promised various programs to promote literacy in the country, little has been done on the ground. A recent report by the UNICEF has claimed. Take a look.
The UNICEF, in its first ever comprehensive report on the education sector in Pakistan, has pointed out that schooling has not been taken care of across various provinces of the country. While the overall literacy rate is only 46%, a dismal 31% of girls are enrolled in schools. According to the report, 40% of all children aged between 5 to 12 in southern Sindh have no access to schools. Despite the presence of nearly 1,63,000 primary schools in Pakistan, merely 40,000 cater to girls. This highlights the wide gap between the genders when it comes to education. Shortage of schools, poor infrastructure, lack of quality teaching and learning material are also seen as the reasons behind the dismal figures. Pakistan government, which had promised the 4% of its total GDP of $249.47 billion in 2014 to be spent on education, has only allocated 2.3% to the sector. This was a gradual reduction of funds throughout the recent years and in sharp contrast to the nearly 23% of GDP that Pakistan spends annually for its armed forces. It had a defense budget of $678 billion in its fiscal year 2014-2015. Pakistan, which recently signed a deal with China to buy 8 submarines worth $5 billion, is also planning to buy 110 fighter jets from the country.
Well, that's the way it was in South Asia this evening. Before we conclude the top stories once again. Relief work on as earthquake hit Nepal continues to come to terms with disaster. India races to offer help in catastrophe struck Nepal. And Pakistan not spending enough to improve education sector, says UNICEF. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Good night.